as a treat for you guys today and in honor of the Women's Olympic Marathon, which is happening on the 14th or Sunday, and the Men's Olympic Marathon, which is happening on the 21st. We'll be covering the history of the Olympic Marathon. So I found two rather bizarre examples, previous Olympic Games, where craziness ensued during the marathons. First of which was in 1904. 1904 was the third games in the current Olympic era, and they were held in St. Louis, Missouri. What makes this marathon so special is it was an utter disaster. So the race was run under what they considered to be brutally hot conditions. I couldn't find an exact number, but let's just assume it was a day like today where the heat index is over 100 degrees. And what happened was a man by the name of Frederick Lords, representing the U.S., was initially declared the winner. He had decided to drop out of the race about 9.5 miles in due to the heat, and he was hitching a ride back to the stadium where it had started and ended, which kind of served as the hub of the Olympics. So he is driving back with his team in the car, and at mile 19 the car breaks down. So he decides to just jog back to the stadium and get help and get another car to drive everybody back. No one knew that he had dropped out of the marathon, was riding in a car. So when the fans saw him entering the stadium, even though he was probably quite early by quite some measure, everyone began cheering. He started celebrating. He went along with it for as long as he could. Now the guy who was actually declared the winner after the official review, which was a whole nother disaster in and of itself, was a guy also representing the U.S., even though he was born in Britain, by the name of Thomas Hicks. So what happened was he was also feeling the heat. He wasn't feeling that well, but about halfway through, his trainer gave him a nice cocktail it was rat poison and brandy mixed together. Not one of my recommended fueling strategies for a marathon or any kind of physical activity. The chemical in the rat poison in small enough doses apparently shuts off your brain's mechanism for pain or for feeling fatigue. And then alcohol in this case was used, kind of mixed in with it as a euphoriant, I guess. This is also similar to how cyclist Tommy Simpson died in the 1966 Tour de France. He was high in a combination of amphetamines and espresso, and I think it wasn't brandy, but it was some other kind of alcohol. Again, do not recommend that, especially not in the heat. So he was the first person to, and trust me, I'm using this term as loosely as I can, legally cross the finish line, even though by the time he finished it, he probably thought he was running on a different planet. Nonetheless, he got the gold medal, high on rat poison. Also interesting, there's a man by the name of Felix Carbajal. He was actually a mailman from Cuba who was penciled in to run the marathon, and he got the dates mixed up. He ends up showing up to the marathon in street clothes, which back in the day was probably wool dress pants, probably a jacket, something of that effect. He cut the legs off of his dress pants and was probably running in dress shoes. So halfway through the marathon, he stops at a local farm because the farmers had left out a basket of apples, and he figured that they had left them out as a snack or refreshment for the runners. What he didn't know, though, was they were rotten. So he gives himself a nasty case of food poisoning and ends up falling asleep under a tree in true tortoise in the hare style. He then gets up and finishes the marathon fourth. The guy passed out mid-race, got up, and was able to finish fourth. Other notables in this event were the first black athletes to ever compete in Olympic Games. They weren't officially representing a country, but they were Swanan tribesmen who were protesting the English war in South Africa, also known as the Second Boer War, I believe. I'm unfamiliar. I'm just as unfamiliar with it as you guys probably are. Anyway, they ended up finishing 9th and 12th, which, even though the guy who finished fourth passed out in mid-race and was still able to finish fourth, that does look kind of bad. But legend has it that they would have won, or they would have at least medaled, had they not, and I'm not making this up, been chased off over a mile off the course by a pack of wild dogs. After learning about this event, I must say that my criteria for what constitutes a bad run has been significantly altered, probably for the better. So another interesting case was the 1912 marathon, which took place in Stockholm, Sweden. So what made these games so special is this was the first time that Japan had sent an athlete. They sent Shizo Kanekuri to run the marathon, and I believe a gymnast. I could be wrong about that, though. This was in the days before transcontinental flights. So the Japanese athletes actually had to travel by boat to Russia, to Siberia, then take the Trans-Siberian Railway all across Russia, then another train north. In total, it took them 18 days to get to the Olympic Games in Sweden. During this time, Shizo Kamakura, the marathon runner, had been experiencing problems with the local food. He hadn't been able to eat that well. He had had problems resting, and he was essentially traveling halfway around the world by train, which is understandable for him. So he literally drops out, as in he passes out halfway through the race because it was run under what were considered, again, brutally hot conditions. The temperature at the start was 77 degrees with extremely high humidity, so I'm guessing that went up even further. He's then nursed back to health by a family of Swedish farmers. Because he was one of the first people to ever represent Japan in the Olympic Games, he considered himself not being able to finish the marathon to be shameful. So instead of telling the race organizers that he had dropped out, he quietly took the 18-day journey back to Japan. And what had happened was he actually ended up being listed as a missing person in Sweden for over 50 years, despite competing in 2 other Olympics. The 1916 games were canceled because of World War I, and he competed unsuccessfully again in 1920 and in 1924. So 50 some odd years later, as a publicity stunt, the Swedish TV network actually got in touch with him and offered him the chance to finish his marathon, which he accepted. Also meant he could get off the missing person list in Sweden. His official time ended up being, sorry, I'm reading it off my laptop, ended up being 54 years, 8 months, 6 days, 5 hours, 32 minutes, and 23 seconds, making it obviously the longest recorded marathon in Olympic history, missing the upper line, and again, helping me redefine my classification for what constitutes a bad run. Again, best of luck to all the Olympic marathon runners, the women that'll be commencing on Sunday the 14th, and the men, which will be on the 21st of August. So continuing on, as I talked about last time, kind of alluded to, didn't really go into too much detail on, I have had to alter my lifting quite a bit. Previously, I was doing what you can consider to be kind of a powerlifting program. Very low volume, but fairly high intensity. And I can illustrate that using this. This is a 1RM chart. It gives you your percentage of 1 repetition max, which is just a fancy way of saying how many times you could lift a certain weight once for a certain exercise, and then the target repetitions that you want to train. I have made some alterations just because it wasn't 100% accurate. But anyway, what I had been going for beforehand was somewhere in this area where I was going for 90 to 95% of my 1 rep max, and I was normally operating in this rep range. So just because this is extremely fatiguing, workouts can take anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half on a bad day. If you're not feeling you need to take longer breaks, this just wasn't going to happen. It wasn't conducive to not only my schedule, which was extremely busy through the months of March, April, and May, and even surprisingly through June, but like I said, it's starting to relax now. So the changes I had to make was I had to limit the amount I was lifting. So I moved down to about 80% of my 1 rep max, and I'm lifting somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 reps. I typically go for 5 to 6. So what this does is this shortens up the workout. I don't need to take as much rest. I'm still lifting at a good intensity. I'm not lifting to failure. I'm not doing anything that's too intense will have any kind of knock-on effect for my runs, either the next day, the same day, or in a couple days. My main goals have been maintenance of lean mass, muscle mass, bone tissue, other types of connective tissue, and also overall strength. So I've been sticking to heavy compounds, deadlifts, squats, bench, all this standard stuff, because that encourages total body strength, core activation, core strength, and you're also getting all the joints in the body to start to move together, which is a huge key to running. Other things I've been doing, such as exercises like the Bulgarian split squat, which I'll do a video breaking down, bird dog, which will actually probably be my next video, breaking down the bird dog, and other core exercises, specifically ones that focus on controlling rotation and overall core stability. So getting everything in the core to work as a unit and help you maintain good posture and prevent too much rotation. What that does is that it helps with your power transmission and it limits wasted energy, which usually isn't a big deal in shorter races, but when you're running 26 miles, you need all the energy you can get. Which also leads me to the next effect that I'm hoping to get out of my lifting, which is maintenance of body composition, maintenance of lean tissue, so muscle mass, but also avoiding putting on a lot of body fat. Now, I know what you're thinking, which is you're training for a marathon, you're running however many miles a week, how can you be putting on body fat? When the body doesn't recover properly, it will add fat. And this can happen through a number of ways, such as just doing too much cardio, which seems counterintuitive, but I've seen in my clients and has actually happened to myself. Recovery was actually the big factor in moving my lifting days to the same days that I run, which is actually working extremely well. Having that day off is a huge mental break, and I really do feel like I'm fully recovered when I run or when I'm back in the gym, as opposed to still carrying some soreness, carrying some fatigue, and just trying to power through it. It's good because I feel like I'm training more efficiently when I'm running. I feel like I'm able to kind of take my mind out of the run, go for it, nothing's really bothering me physically, and then when I'm actually lifting, because I've cut down the volume, I don't feel bogged down in the middle of a workout. I'm typically not feeling too much from running that same day, and otherwise I feel like I'm able to work out efficiently and effectively, and I'm usually in and out of the gym in 45 minutes, whereas it used to be close to an hour to an hour and a half. And on top of that, the workouts would be extremely taxing, and I'd feel a ton of fatigue the next day or even that same day. So I haven't quite decided what the subject for the next video is going to be. I'll probably upload a sort of half vlog, half mini training diary, which will be me going through the bird dog yoga pose and its application for not only people who are strength training, but also why it's important for runners to do it as well. That will be uploaded sometime within the next 2 days. After that, for training diary number 6, I have a few ideas, but I'm not 100% set yet. So that being said, if you guys have any questions, anything you want to see me address, please leave a comment down below or on my Facebook. Also below will be the links I used for today's video, so the history of the Olympic Marathon. I did have to double check, and yes, everything that I said happened in 1904 actually did happen. I didn't just make it up. As well as Fitness Together's Facebook, Running Brook's homepage, and anything else that's relevant for today's video. So again, thank you very much, guys. Thank you to everyone who's generously donated already. Please keep the donations coming in. Every dollar counts.